We're all the way at the bottom of Pei Hey on the base. And yesterday we learned about the Shaila of Caleb Shal Lokeach Reshus Moicher. If the Lokeach comes with his own bag, but he's in the store of the Moicher, if the Moicher tells him, put it into your bag and be kind, everybody agrees that that worked. The question is if the Moicher didn't say that. The Lokeach just put the product into his bag, but he's in the Rishus of the Moicher, will it be kind? The Gemara tried to bring several rayas, but didn't succeed. So now we're up to a raya that starts 3 lines from the bottom of Pehei Amud Beis. Tashma, Moshach Chamorov Upayal. The Lokeach found that the Moicher had the Paris that Lokeach wanted to buy. It was on the person of the Chamorov, the people who were the camel, the donkey drivers, Upayalav, or other employees. If you look at the Lashon, the Rishbam actually adds some words here. The Rishbam says, Mochach Chamorov Upayalav, Tichnisen Lokeach L'sich Beisai, Vatfu al Gabon. The tfua was on their person. The Rishbam makes it very clear to us that when you make a Mashiach on Paris, you have to make a Mashiach on Paris. But if you make a Mashiach on a person, and the person is holding the Paris, that will not be effective to be cutting the Paris. And that's what you did over here. You pulled the people, or the people that had Paris upon them, you pulled them into your Rishus, and you didn't unload them. So the pairs are not in your chotzer because they're still on the person that you pulled into your rishus. Therefore, it's not a kinyan. So bein pasak achlei moda, ubein moda achlei pasak. It doesn't matter if you measured. It doesn't matter if you already agreed on the price. It's not. There's no kinyan here. Shnein yichodim lachsu ben. Turning on to Amud Aleph, Pevov Amud Aleph. But Pirkon, if you unloaded the fruits from the people. Now the pashtus is they're not holding grains of wheat in their bare hands. There's a sack with wheat inside it, and they're carrying the sack. So Pirkan, if you unloaded the sack, l'soich beisai, into your house, then it's already a kinyan. Pasach acheloi modad ein shneyen yecholim lachzu behen. If they had already decided on the price, the lakeich is koined because it's in the lakeich's rishus. Modad actually pasak, or if you measure but you didn't make up the price yet, there they could be chayzer because they didn't make up a price. Now, what's the case? Clearly, it's sitting in these. The grain is clearly sitting in sacks. Who do the sacks belong to? The sacks belong to the moicher, and they're sitting in the rishus of the lekeach. And what does the brisa say? The brisa says you're kind. So therefore, you have a raya that the kalim of the moicher rishus lekech will not be ma'akiv the king, because you don't look at the kalim at all. The kalim are irrelevant. You look at the main rishus that it's in. So with the kalim the moicher rishus lekech loikana, if the fact that it's in the sack of the moicher does not prevent the lekech from being koined, because the whole thing is in the rishus of the lekech, well then, on the flip side, Caleb the Lekeach Nami versus Moicher Lekana. So if it was the Lekech's bag and they were in the Rishus of the Moicher, it won't be kind either. Once again, the shaila is the bag bottled to the land, or is the bag distinct from the land? And from here you see that the bag is bottled to the land, because that's why even though the pairs were in a sack, as long as it's in the property of the Lekech, it will be kind of. So you have a raya that Caleb shall lekech, but moicher will not be kind. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, who said it's in the sack? B'sheshavchan. The whole thing might be speaking where he poured the grain out of the sack, and it's on the ground in the lekech's rishus. Ikbid Rava. Rava didn't like that. Rava didn't like that Rav Nachman by Yitzchak should so easily dismiss his raya. And he asked, Midi, Shavchan Katani, Pirkan Katani. The Brisa doesn't say if he poured it out of the sacks, then it's koine. The Brisa merely says if you unloaded the sacks from the people, then it's koine. So I insist, Dr. Rava, that it's inside the sack, yet the sack of the moicher will not stop the kinyan from the reshus of the lakeach from happening. So I maintain we still have a raya that kelev shalakech b'shus moicher would not be koine. Ela Amar Mar Baravashi, Zok Mar Baravashi, Bimis Achli to me. You're assuming that we're discussing grain, and grain normally is kept in sacks. No, we're talking about garlic cloves, which garlic cloves are normally not kept in sacks. So pirkon means unloading by definition means putting the pears directly on the floor. I'm not sure. Let me look. Chavila shum, bundles. Oh, so they're bundled, but they're not in a sack. They're wrapped around with a string. They're bundled. The leka sakim. There's nothing that they're contained within. So once I don't know how you bundle cloves of garlic, but again, I'm not a garlic salesman. Garlic is a big zach. There's just a big garlic fair where all the garlic farmers bring their garlic together, and then they each eat them, and they see who has the best breath. But the garlic is a big zach. It's healing qualities. Because there's the Gemara weiter. It's speaking where there are no kalim, and that's why this whole shaila, this whole halacha is not relevant to our shaila of kalim shalakech b'shus ma'achim. Amar lehuna bared Mar Zutra l'Ravina. Huna bared told Ravina, Michti. Let's think about this for a second. Pirkon katan. So Rav Huna is no longer discussing our shaila of kalim shalakech b'shus ma'achim or vice versa. He has a whole different shaila. Pirkon katan. We're talking that the peiros are actually in the reshus of the lakech. Why does the Brisa make a distinction? Mali pasak, mali loy pasak. What does it matter if they made up the price? Because if you look at the last case here, pasak ain't shneim yocholim lachser, but loy pasak shneim yocholim lachser. So making up the price, why is that such a critical thing? We have a kinyan. It's in the chutz of the lakech. Zok Gemara Amar Lein pasak som chadaite. When are they both agreeable to this transaction to occur? That's only if they agreed on the price, so everyone is happy with the deal. But loy pasak, if we didn't yet agree on the price, there's no sale at all. In fact, loy som chadaite, because it's possible that the lokeich will not want to pay as much as the moicher, and the moicher is not going to want to unload it, sell it, and it's possible that the moicher will not accept what lokeich is giving, or it's possible. I'm sorry that the moicher, it's possible the moicher will want more, the lokeich will want to pay less, and there won't be a deal. So that's why there's no smichas das for a kinyan at all until the price is established, or if it's a commodity whose price is already established by the public. Let's see if we still have a raya. We're still looking for a raya about Caleb Sholekech B'Shusmach. The Rav and Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel both agreed that Caleb Shol Adam Kainaloi B'Chol Makayim, right? Except for Rishus HaRabim, right? This is the halacha that we learned yesterday. Caleb Shol Adam Kainaloi B'Chol Makayim. Lo Suyemai. What is it? What is the B'Chol Makayim coming to be inclusive of? La Suyei Rishus Moicher. Isn't it coming to be Marba Rishus Moicher? So you see, Rav and Shmuel holds that even Rishus Moicher, the Caleb of Lekech HaKaina. Zok Gemara, Hasam Damale Zil Kni. Rav and Shmuel's case is where the Moicher tells Lekech, please go be kainit. So he's specifically allowing the use of his Rishus to be kainit to the Lekech. There's not a shaila. Our whole discussion that we've had until now is if the Lekech wasn't specifically instructed by the Moicher to use his rishus to be kaina, rather it's if someone did it stama, and that shaila we have not yet found a proof to. No zil kni, he's saying put it in your bag and be kaina that way, and my rishus won't get in the way. Yeah. Tanan also, we learned over there. Nechosim sheyesh lo nemachrayis, a very famous mishnah, niknin bekesef b'shtar u'b'chasaf. if you're selling karka, which is referred to as nechasim sheish lo machrayis, because you can rely on it. It's always there. It can't be stolen. Can't be taken away. So you could be koyed to kesef, shtar, and chazon. Which ain't lo machrayis and metaltlin ain't niknin ela b'meshicha. You could only be koyed them with meshicha by pulling it into your rishos. B'sura masnila, in surah we learned b'sura masnila lahashmaitza. We're about to quote an interesting halacha regarding Kinyan Mashicha and Kinyan Agba. We're about to quote a halacha. In Surah, this halacha was quoted in the name of Rav Chisda. The Pamadisa, Masnula Mishmei Rav Kahana, Varamila Mishmei Rav. So we have such a discussion as who said this halacha that we're about to herald. Now we'll get to the exciting halacha itself. Lo Shanu. The only things that you could be koine with Mashiach, the only type of metalton that you could be koine with Mashiach is Ela Devara Mishain Darkan, are things that it's not typical to pick up. If you're pulling an animal, it'll be koine with Mashiach. If it's something really big and heavy, you'll be koine with Mashiach. Avol Dvarim Shedarkan Lagbia. But if it's jewelry, which the derech is to pick up, the Agba in the Mashiach. You can't drag an earring across the floor and be koine. But you could lift it up. No, so forklift wouldn't be. You want to of doing if lifting something with mechanical means is I have a perfect riot, because one of the ways that the Gemara says to be koine an elephant bagba. How are you koine an elephant bagba? Zok the Gemara, very simple. Put a stool on the ground and push the animal to step onto the stool. So you see, using a keli to lift something does count for Agba. Okay. Zok to Gemara, so we're now discussing what you could be koine with Mashiach and what you could be koine with Agba. Now we had a halacha that's something that it's normal to make Mashiach on. You could be koine with Mashiach, and if it's normal to make Agba with it, you're going to be koine with Agba. Gewaltig. Yosy Abaye, the Kamer Loshmite. Abaye was sitting and he said over this halacha. And Esvei Rav Ada bar Masna Abaye. And Rav Ada bar Masna challenged Abaye about this halacha. You're telling me that something that you could be koine with Agba, Meshicha wouldn't work for it. I'm going to prove to you something that you could be koine be'Agba. You could even be koine with Meshicha, which will contradict the halacha you just said. Hagoin of kiss b'Shabbos. If someone steals a wallet, a purse on Shabbos, so that means you went into someone's personal property and you took his purse and you walked out into the Rosh Hashanah. Chayiv, you will be chayiv for the Isur Daraisa of being moitzi reshus on Shabbos, and you'll be chayiv to pay for the money that you stole. Why? Shekvar nischayev b'geneva. We know that if you do one ma'isa, and in that ma'isa you're over a chiv misa and a chiv mammon, we have a rule of kom le b'derabamine, and you get the chiv misa and you don't have to pay the chiv mammon. But if you stole something on Shabbos and that triggered saya chiv misa and saya chiv geneva, there's no kom le b'derabamine because the two aveiros, the two chiyuvim, did not come at the same time. When were you muchur for Geneva? While you're still in the property of the Nigzal, because you lifted it up and you made a Kinyan Agba. Once you made a Kinyan Agba, you're a Ganev, you're muchur to pay for the object. You have the Chiv of a Heshev, it's Exela Shagoza. Then you walk out of the Rishos, and now you're over in the Shabbos. So the Chiyuvim are coming at two different times. That's not Komle B'Drabim. But what if you Megar v'yoytzi? You were not koine it in the Gan of the Rishos. You dragged it on the floor to take it out of his Rishos. So there, as you cross the threshold, you're being over Haitzah Shabbos. And as you cross the threshold, you're going to be koine. Shabbos u'geneva b'imkech. So here you have a kiss that you could have been koine with Hagba, because the first case of the Brisa is you were koine with Hagba. And the same item, the same geneva, If you pull it to Mashicha, you're also koine. Barakis the barak bohu fafilu hachi kani b'Mashicha. Yet you still see here that the moment it crosses the threshold, the Chiv Geneva is coming. How is the Chiv Geneva coming? Obviously, because you're a kohen. So the first question you have to ask, because you didn't lift it up, you have to make it. Yeah, but you have to make a Mashicha into your Rishus. You can't make a Mashicha in someone else's property. But the question is, where did you take it to be Chayv al Shabbos? Into a Rishus Harabim. Mashicha doesn't work into a Rishus Harabim. Mashicha works into your Rishus. So the Gemara there explains that what happened is you put your hand on the floor right at the threshold. So when you dragged it out, you drag it right into your hand. You're not kind of hakbah because your hand is on the ground, but your hand has a din of Yerushus. Sorry? Because from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid, I don't think there's a Chiyuv D'Oraisa of Shabbos. So we had to have been going into a Rishus HaRabbim. So Zog to Gemara, it's Kishmak, if you have a neighbor that you can steal from, I know that's why the Schwarzes and the Puerto Ricans want to live in the projects in Williamsburg, because they daven every time they bench that their nechasav should be mitzlachim and krefim le'ir. Why should they have to travel so far if they can just steal from their neighbors? So Zog to Gemara, Eisvei Ravada Bar Mas Labaya. I go in if Kisbu Shabbos Chayiv Shekvan is Chayiv v'Geneva Kodim Shiyavel le'Yisha Shabbos. V'Yimegar v'Yoytze Potter. Sharai. So Shabbos v'Geneva Vam Kechad. Varakis the Barak Bo, because we just said a moment ago that when you pick it up, you're coin it right away, and you're chayav for Geneva. In the Rishus that aganev. Yet in the case where you dragged it out, you'll be coin with Mashicha as well. Amar lei. So Abaye answered to Rabbi Masna, no, but Misna. This is not speaking where you took the sack itself. It's speaking where you were dragging the straps. It's like one of those bags that has a drawstring on, and you pull the strap. What does that have to do with anything? Ananami b'misnakai. So regardless, we're talking about the straps. You should still be kind of bagbo. Ananami b'misnakami. Omerlei. So Abai said no. B'midi the boy misna. You know what type of item we're talking about? Where you're koinit b'mishicha. That's something that needs straps, meaning it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing that would normally not be the derech to be koinah with hagbah, and that's why you're koined the Mashiach. Gewaltig. So again, we have a halacha that something that you could be koined with hagbah, something that is the derech to be koined with hagbah, you're not going to be able to be koined by Mashiach. Tashma, Rishus Meicher loy kona ad shiagbiena oyat shoytiena Rishusay. We're going back to that brisa from 2 days ago, or from yesterday, with the 4 things that apply by a mecher. So it says that if the product that the lekeich is buying is in the reshus of the mecher, the lekeich will not be koinah until either he makes hagbah or he makes mashicha. Look at that. If you have a choice, obviously something that you could do hagbah on, you could do mashicha. Alma midi de bar hagbah. So right off the bat, you see from this brisa giving 2 options, hagbah or mashicha. Obviously, you could do something. You could be kind of something with hagbah. That same item, you would be able to be kind of a mashicha. That's not what the brisa means. What the brisa means is midi de bagbah. So when it says so it means if it's something that you normally make hagbah on, make hagbah. Midi de bar mashicha, something that you could make mashicha on, the mashicha, but lav dafka is the same thing. So there's actually 2 ways to understand this Gemara. Actually, not. There's one way to understand this Gemara, but the Rishonim speak out. There's another way the Gemara could have answered. What did the Gemara answer here? We're talking about 2 different items. The brayso that says Achiyak Biena is speaking about an item that's small that you would normally make kinag ba on, and when the brayso says Oyachi Ochen Mishuso, it's speaking about a different item. Zok to Rashbam, Zok to Toisus, really, the Gemara could have said both items that we're talking about is a big, heavy item that you only do by Mashiach. But the halacha is that if you could be kind of something with Mashiach, you could still work with Hagbah. You could even be kind of an elephant with Hagbah. Hagbah is kind of a chamakim, even things that you normally use Mashiach for. So that's what the Gemara could have answered. We're speaking about an object that is something that you would normally make Mashiach on because it's big and heavy, yet you could still be koine through Agba or through Mashiach. So we still don't have a raya because we're looking for a raya as to whether or not something that you could be koine Agba, can you be koine to Mashiach? Again, I'm speaking wrong. Not that you coine with Agba. You could be koine anything with Agba. Something that the derech is to make Agba on, could you be koine something that the derech to make Agba on, could you be koine that for Mashiach? Zok Gemara Tashma. Maybe let's bring a raya from here. If someone is selling pears to his friend, Moshach v'loy modad, if he made Mashiach, even though he didn't measure it yet, kani, it'll be kani. Frank the Gemara, about pears. When you're buying small pears, you're buying a bag of apples. The benag banin, surely the norm is to lift up a bag of apples, not to drag it on the floor. Vikatani, yet the Brisa says in reference to pears, the kani b'mashicha. So you have a raya that even though something is the derech to go back bo, you see kinyan mashicha will work. So the Gemara deflects. No, we're talking about big massive sacks, or big massive bundles. Really, if we're talking about big massive bundles, that's the derech to make mashicha. Right, the Gemara. If you're going to tell me we're talking about big massive bundles that you don't make a on. Let's look at the safe. If you buy pishton from your friend, the olive sticks and the bach sticks and loikana, you will not be koine. Which we teach as making hagbah, lifting it up completely and moving it over. So Zok to Gemara, pishton, the assumption is that it's shlifi ketani. So let's have a look at the Rishpa. Actually, let's learn the whole Rishpam here because it's very important in getting clarity in what this discussion here is. We're assuming that we're speaking about small packages. Because as we see now, the Bryce is making a distinction between Paris and Pishta. What is the difference between Paris and Pishta? This is the full text of the Bryce, which we now know. If you made Mashicha, you'll be kaina. The Mashichas kol shehu mahanya beParis. When you're buying Paris, you don't have to move it so much. You only have to move it a drop. Why do you only have to move it a drop? Because it's usually a small bundle, small bag. And therefore, do you remember we had a machlokes when you make a mashiach on a ship? Do you have to move it the full length of the ship, or can you just move it a little bit? Right? We had that discussion. We're working with Shmuel that a ship you would have had to move the entire length. So why do you only have to make mashiach on Paris a little bit? Because Paris are small. If you have a 12-foot ship, you got to put it 12 feet. But if you have a bag that's maybe 6 inches, you just pull it 6 inches, and you've accomplished the mashiachas kula. By definition, flax stalks are long, so you can't just move them a little bit. Even though they're small bundles, they're not heavy, but they're very long. Merely pulling them a little bit would not be kind of them. Let's say a stalk of pishon is 6 feet, you'd have to drag it 6 feet. While Paris, you'd only have to drag 6 inches, because typically that's what type of package they'll come in. Pishon, which will be a bundle that will be 6 feet long, you have to drag 6 feet. Either you have to drag it 6 feet, or lift it up to a different place. So it should be completely off the same floor space that it was on before. Because you can argue that Rav, the Polik Besvina, even Rav, who holds by a ship, you only have to move it an inch. But by Paris, you'd have to move it the full length of the object. Why? When we deny the porta, it's on the water. Water is constantly moving around. So if you just move the ship a little bit, all of the water around it sort of changed. When you drag something along the ground, it's the same ground that was there before. And maybe even Rav would agree that you would have to pull these long stalks the full 6 feet, because otherwise part of it is still sitting on the original place where it was sitting. So Zok to Gemara, you know why you're going to be able to be kind of a Mashiach, the payros, is because they were very big bundles, too heavy to lift. The Hachi Kamaflik ben Paris Lepishta. So how are we going to make a distinction between Paris and Pishtan? Hamoshech Paris, if you Moshech Paris, sometimes if you'll make a Mashiach, it will be kind. And you don't have to do Hagbah. When is that? Kigoyin b'shlifi ravavi. If you had big heavy packages that you couldn't lift, wouldn't be normal to lift, that's where Mashiach will be kind with Paris. There, schlepping those pairs would work. Hagbah works because Hagbah works all the time. But when you're selling Pishtan, we're going to soon see Pishtan will never be put into a very big bundle. It'll always be something light. As the Gemara is going to explain shortly. There are always lighter packages that you could make Hagbah on. Those you won't be kind until you move him completely. So now, when the Gemara answered, we're changing the full shot of the whole price, and we're not saying the distinction between Paris and Pishtan is how far you have to drag it. Now we're saying that by Paris we're speaking about a big heavy package that you could be kind of a Mashiach, but by Pishtan we're speaking about a light package that you could be kind of a Hagbah, and therefore you will require a Kinyan Hagbah for the Pishtan. When people make Hagbah, technically you could just lift it up and put it right back down, and you were kind of. But normally when people pick up what they've purchased, they don't put it back down. No one's picking something up. You put your bags, your groceries in your bags, and you lift up your bag. Even if the bag belongs to the moicher, when you lift up the bag and you made Hagbah, you're not putting it back down on the counter. You're walking out of the store with it into your rishus, to your car. You lift it up and you go. So that's why it says the hilchach nakat mimokim lemokim. That's why when it discusses kinyan Hagbah in reference to the Pishtan, it says like kana achi taltleni mimokim zeh lemokim zeh lemokim acher. All it means is Hagbah. It's not talking about the scope of a Mashiach. And that's what the Gemara is asking at this point. According to me, who I understood that Sai the Pishtan and Sai the first case is speaking by small bags that you could make Hagbah on. How will I make a distinction between the Reisha and the Seifa? Between the regular pairs that you only have to make a small Mashiach on and the Pishtan that you have to make a big Mashiach on, that's how I'm settling the difference. I'm saying it's merely, they both work for Mashiach. The question really is how far you have to schlep it. So, the Mashiach is kosher could defrishis. Like we said earlier, that by regular pairs, you only pull them a little bit when you're making Mashiach because they're smaller, you don't have to move them so far. And by Pishtan, you have to move them very far because you have to pull them the full 6 feet. But according to you, because you want to avoid saying that something that you could be kind of Hagbah, you could be kind of Mashiach, so you have to say the mukmas nami l'reisha b'shlifi ravavi. You have to say that the reisha is speaking with big heavy packages, and that is why it's not the derech to be kind of Hagbah, aruch and long. Now leka leflugi ben reisha l'seifa. How are you going to explain the difference between the regular pairs that you're kind of a Mashiach and the Pishtan that you're kind of a Mashiach? Why is there a different Mashiach required by the Pishtan than there is required by the pairs? Ella, the Bereisha Mahanya Mashicha. What are you saying? You're saying that, but in the Reisha, Mashicha helps. The Regilin Liash Lafi Rabbi. Because normally you're going to have big bags, big packages of Paris, which will not be the derech to make a hagbah on, and that's why in the Reish it says a mere Mashicha is enough. Ubepishton, we said in the Sefer was hagbah. Ubepishton loy mahanya Mashicha el hagbah. By pishton you're requiring hagbah. Why? Bishum the loy have a ravavi alazutri. Because normally when you package pishton, it's light packages, and therefore you make Mashicha. So the whole difference, the way we're learning now between the Reish and the Sefer, is in the Reish is speaking about big bags, and therefore you couldn't make Hagbah on. And by Pishton, it's speaking about small bags, small bundles, and you were able to make Hagbah on.
Whole thing is all depending on large areas, small Pishton.
Kal Talmudic logic. Dr. Gemara, Omar, Dr. Gemara, how could you make such a distinction? How can you make such a distinction? Otu Pishton, Bishlifli Ravavi, Milo Yavdi. Why are you making a distinction that in the Reisha, Mashiach works, it's a big bag, it's heavy, so therefore you're not going to lift it. And the Sefer, by Pishton, is speaking about light. The same way you can make a big package of Paris, you can make a big package of Pishton. So it's not, you cannot make such a distinction. And you're saying that when there's a big package, you'd make Mashiach on it. So why can't you make Mashiach on the Pishton? If you're learning the ratios by big packages, why don't you learn the Sefer as a big package? No, you never make big, heavy bundles of Pishton. You know why? Because they fall apart. Shiny Pishton, the Mishtamit. Pishton falls apart. Since Pishton falls apart, you never make big, heavy bundles out of it. It's always, by definition, going to be light. You couldn't possibly make a big bundle. And therefore, since you couldn't possibly make a big bundle, it's always going to be something that you can make Hagbah. So we could still learn that in the ratio, the reason why it was good by Mashiach is because it was a big, heavy package that you cannot make Hagbah on. Not the derech to make Hagbah on. That's what it's going to be Mashiach. By Pishton, it is the derech to make Hagbah on it, because by definition, it's going to be a smaller bundle, and therefore you have to make Hagbah. That is one pshat in the Gemara, but there's another pshat in the Gemara, and that is Rabbeinu Chanal Pirish Shiny Pishtan de Mishtamit, meaning the reason why really it's a big bundle, and really you should be able to make a Mashiach. The reason why the Bride says Bagbah is because if you try to make Mashiach on a big bundle, it'll make the bundle fall apart. Kivan Shemi Moshech Misnatek Ein Darkai Li Moshech. Technically, it's something that's big and heavy that you would make Mashiach. But the nature of bundles of pishton, if you drag them on the floor, they're going to fall apart. Therefore, you can only be coining them by lifting them up. Again, we don't have a raya whether or not something that the derech is to be coined b'agbah, can you be coined to Mashiach? Because we deflected another raya. Amalei Ravina Ravashi, let's try another raya. Tashma. Behema gasa niknis b'mesir. A large animal, cow, a horse, donkey, you cut it b'mesira by turning over the reins of the animal. When the moicher turns the reins over to the lakeach, that's mesira. That's like giving the keys of the car. You give the keys of the car or buy a house. What do you pick up from the lawyer after closing? The keys to the house. Now that's not a good raya because karka is not niknas b'mesira, because first you gave him the money, so that's what did it. But I'm just trying to show you how turning over the reins is like handing something over. But a small animal like a sheep, you kind of bagba, divrei meir. You have an article. Is it divrei meir of Shimon ben Elazar and the Chachamim argue, or is it divrei meir and Shimon ben Elazar and the Chachamim argue? No, divrei meir of Shimon ben Elazar. The Yechidim of Meir and Shimon ben Elazar, they hold dakas bagba. And the Chachamim argue the hemedaka b'meshiach. You could be coined a behemedaka b'meshiach. So we're bringing our raya from the Chachamim. The Chachamim say a behemedaka you could even be coined a b'meshiach. But a behemedaka, we all agree you can lift up. But behemedaka the baragboi, the katani yet a chamol the coined b'meshiach. So once again, you have a raya. That's something that's the derech to do bagba. You'll be coined a b'meshiach. The Gemara shiny behemah desircha. Did you ever try to pick up a child that didn't want to be picked up? They could cement themselves to the ground. You could yank as hard as you want. You could not get them off the ground. So behemoth dakas have that same feature. You know why you don't make akbar on them? Because if they don't want to be picked up, you won't be able to pick them up. And therefore, you could be koined back bone. Okay. I know because whenever I try picking up my inical, they cement themselves to the floor and they don't want, they scream and fight. My daughter says, don't bother the kid, let the kid be. But I want to pick up my inical. Well, then my daughter says, you want to pick up my inical? Don't pick her up with your hands, pick her up with a candy. You have a candy, they'll come running to you. Okay. Zog the Gemara weiter. That's what my son-in-law says. My daughter says, don't you dare feed my kid candy. Okay, Zog the Gemara weiter. Rav Shmuel, Domer Tavayu. So now we're going to a different topic. So we finished the topic of whether or not something that's the derech to be kind of bagba, can you be kind of with Mashiach? We didn't have a raya either way. Rav Shmuel, but what we do know is something that the derech is to be kind of Mashiach, Hagbah will work for it. The question is the other way around. If it's the derech to be kind of bagba, will Mashiach work for it? Which very much sounds like Hagbah is the superior opinion. Hagbah kind of b'chol. Rav Shmuel Darmi Tavayu. Rav and Shmuel both agreed on another halach. Kur b'shloishim ani moichala. What if I tell you I want to sell you a kur and I want to charge you 30 sela for it? So that means, up to Rashbam, that I'm not a merchant. I don't really want to sell it, but I need money. How much money do I need? I need 30 sela. How could I get 30 sela by selling you one kur? I mean, I'm not interested in selling you a half a kur. I'm not interested in selling you a quarter of a kur. I'm not interested in selling you a kur and a half. I only want to sell you a kur because I'm only trying to create cash for myself of 30 sel. So if you structure the sale in this fashion, as we're measuring out the grain into this measuring device, if we're not at exactly a kur, I can back out because I never wanted to be makna you anything less than the kur or more than the kur. I wanted to be makna you exactly a kur. So up until there's a kur in the measuring device, you won't be kind. But what if when I sold it, I expressed it differently? It did kur b'shloishim sa b'sela. I'm selling you a kur for shloishim, which works out to a sela for each saw. So that's what I'm selling you. That's clearly just establishing the unit price. But avada, I'm not looking for a specific amount. Whatever you want to buy, I want to sell. So then the halach is rishon kana, because as each saw goes into the measuring, it ticks off another seller, and I'm happy with that sale. So basically, the way you express a sale indicates if you want it only to be an all or nothing sale or part of. I think when you buy stocks, let's say you want to buy 500 shares, so you could select in your selection, is it all or nothing? And as if you can't get 500 shares, you don't want to buy any, or you'll even willing to take partial order, whatever you have available, as well as when you sell. If I'm wrong, it makes sense because I haven't traded shares in a very, very long time. And even when I did, it was on a play account, so I don't even know how it works in the real world. But I'll call upon him, and I can't even say, if my play account was real, I'd be a multimillionaire. No, if my play account was real, I would be begging on the streets. So Dr. Gemara Viter, but I'll call upon him, makes a difference how you identify the sale. If it's all or nothing, then it's all or nothing. But if you identify each saw besela, then as each saw gets poured into the keli, the lekech will be cut. Tashma. So let's have a look to see how this halacha of Rav Shmuel holds up to the Mishnah, to the scrutiny of the brises. Once again, we got really good use out of that brisa that we learned yesterday with the Arba Dvarim B'Mecher, because we used it for the Shaila of Kalim and Rishus Harabim. We used it for Kalim and the Lekech, which is Moicher. We used it, and now we're using it again for discussing the sale, if it's a part sale or if it's all a sale. Tashma, if it belonged either to the Lekech or to the Moicher, Rishon Kam, which means if it was Lekech's bag that we were putting the sold items into, the moment it's put into the bag of the Lekech, it's going to be kaina. Now, it says this in very general terms. The Brisa doesn't specify. That's only if I spoke out saw besela. It's mashma, no matter how the sale was structured, even if it was just Korbish Loishim, you still say Rishon Rishon Kana. V'avagav the loynus malamida, even though you didn't reach the full amount that was designated for the sale to be. So you have a raya against Rav and Shmuel, and for the Gemara, the Bach sticks in there, Hacha b'mayaskinon, going to Amr lei, hin b'shneim aser shloyim, lug b'sela animorchla. It is speaking where you said, hin b'aser b'shneim aser shloyim, lug b'sela animorchla. And it's speaking where you have, it's a measuring cup with lines in it, and every hin is measured in the cup. In the hin of the Beis Hamikdash, there was a big measuring cup to measure the oil, and there were lines in it. And it would tell you this line is for the mincha of a small animal, and this is for the mincha of a big animal, and you would know just how much to pour in there. So how does this answer our shaila? So let's see the Rashbam. It's a long Rashbam on it. Zok the Rashbam. Tashma im haisa hamida shalachad mehen rishon rishon kana v'avagav the loyd nismalas hamida. So this is shver on Rav and Shmuel. And for the Gemara hach b'maya skinon v'da amerlei hin b'yud beisloim lug b'sala ani moichla uchot amer of kana shnas es hayavan hachadami over here. The chayniker, this is the right girsa. The me'ahi reisha shayach lemifrach, from the reisha you can ask. Let me look at the hay. The katani, it says in the reisha, the katani ba behedja. It says beferish in the brayso that we learned. Ad shaloy nismalas hamida l'moicha. In the reisha, we had a case where the mida belonged to a third party, and the Gemara said until it's full, it belongs to the moicher. Aval b'mida shalachet behen loy chayshinan l'nismalas hamida. Ala rishon rishon hanichnas bekelav shalakach kadn lakach. So that is the kasha. The kasha is you see clearly by the comparison to the earlier case, where first the keli belongs to the moicher, and only then does it belong to the kech, and that explains why the lakech is not kind until it's full. But if it was always the keli of the lakech, you'd be kind of every bit as you pour it in. Even though we didn't yet put in the full amount that the sale was going to be, then you do a kama, and we don't know exactly how much there's there. Then you do kama yesh. Since it wasn't full yet, the keli, which is representing the amount that I'm selling, is not full yet. The measuring cup wasn't full. I'm going to keep one finger here and one finger there, because we're going to be going back and forth. Where's my yud? The moicher and the lekeach can no longer be chayzer. The sale is as soon as it gets into the kelim of the lekeach. The Brisa doesn't specify what the case is. So it would even be the case where I wanted to sell a full kur. Biyacha together. So even though I specified the full amount that I wanted to sell, surely over here where I sold a kur, and I'm already most of the way there, I'm already at 29. Surely surely you'll be kinded on the way. Because you look at value, which could be shver sign Rav and Shmuel, because they both said that if I specified I want to sell a kur asar or whatever it is, even though the fruit are in the kelim of lekech, they won't be kinded until it's the full amount. So the Gemara answered to Rabbi Kinon. The Gemara answered, no, we have to say that there is a nukimta. With the Amr lei hin b'yud beis sloim. I'm selling a hin for 12 sloim. Lug, but a lug is besela ani moichel. V'hayu yud beis shnosois ke'ein blitois yoitzin b'doif ne'akli. Now again, the rule is you have to sell a complete measure. So if he said hin b'yud beis sloim lug besela, that means the lug for every lug I'm going to pay a seller. There's an independent marking, and I know as I hit each lug because I have lines in the measuring cup that tells me when I hit a lug. There was little markers sticking out on the inside of the measuring cup to show you where you're holding. So therefore, as soon as it hits a certain line, you do a show look. We know we have a look here. You know when we call it full? Yes, the whole keli wasn't full. You're right, the whole keli wasn't full. But since it hits a milestone on the measuring cup, that's considered I reached a full amount. The dam yamamish lekur b'shloishim saw b'sela ani moichlach. The kanakol saw b'sa. Since he said, yes, I want to sell you the full hin, but I want you to know the price of each loig is X dollars. So, and his measuring cup could identify a full loig. That's why it works. Hachanami, kol lug v'lug, kani, each lug will be kind of kishemagia l'simin when it gets up to that line. For Reisha de katani chilip, bein nistamas, l'loin nistamas, and in the Reisha, where it said that until the keli is completely full, no matter how many lines it has in it, until it's completely full, the items remain by the moicher. Even though it's speaking under the same circumstances. So why didn't you say each loig on its own is kind as soon as we hit that measuring mark? Nevertheless, here it won't work because we already said that we're speaking about the measuring cup belong to a third party. The kiwan de b'mida since we're speaking about a measuring cup that belongs to a third party, and the seller intends to fill the whole measuring cup to the top, we say that it's considered the moicher's keli till he completely finishes what he's trying to do, which is measuring the full amount that he wants to sell. The loan does not transfer over to the lekach, so it should be the lekach's keli to be kind until it's completely full, like we learned yesterday. That's why this keli was lent to both the moicher and the lekach, zel medida to the moicher for measuring, and once that's complete, v'zeh lekachta mishet esmale, and the lekach is kind the keli to take it and transport it with it, l'shafcha v'kela v'rishus, to dump the pairs into the lekach's kelim or into the lekach's rishus. Okay, so that takes care of this teretz. Okay, let's stop here and mission tomorrow we'll now with this. Tomorrow is the second last stop of this parak. Oh no, it's not. Oh, I thought we were finishing. Oh, where did I thought I saw the end of the parak coming. I must have been mixed up. Okay, perfect. So mission tomorrow we'll do Pei Zayin. I don't know why I got mixed up. Oh, we have Shabbos?